Hello, dear friends. Here we are at Cardiac Radio, one more series of studies on phenomenal books that transform lives. We are in a new series titled Lifting Hope, and we need it. We need to lift our hopes because the world is always progressing, never regressing, no matter what happens. And we're going to be studying in our therapeutic conversations the phenomenal book. And let me open here for you. Uh-huh. Where is the image? Let me show it to you. There you go. Lifting Hope. Lifting Hope, Memoirs of a Suicide. That's precisely the book that we'll be studying. It has never been studied here at Cardiac Radio before. It's the first time ever that we are going to be studying this book. And this book, though the title says Memoirs of a Suicide, in fact, it's a book that really brings to us a lot of hope. It's so beautiful. And the way in which this book was put together and came to life is really amazing. So we invite you to join us. I can see friends here who have been joining us. Hello, Carol Correia. Hello, Rihanna. Hello, Daisy. How are you? I see a few friends who have said something. I know there are more people, right? I cannot see everyone. But if you want to say anything or ask a question, please feel free to type it in and we're going to communicate with you. If you are watching or listening to this on demand, you can always send an email at cardiacradio@gmail.com and we'll reply to you, or can go to cardiacradio.com. There is a contact form and we'll be happy to join you in your reflections, to reply to you, right? Yes, Rihanna, we're very thankful for this book. Memoirs of a Suicide. What is this book about? Well, the main spirit author is Camilo Botelho. He is actually, this is like a pseudonym for the real author's name, which is Camilo Castelo Branco. We're going to talk a little bit about him and also about the medium, Yvonne do Amaral Pereira. Who is she? And also, of course, Leon Denis, because Leon Denis revised the book. Right, Sunshine, how are you? I can see you. Here, Gisele Bisso, welcome. Welcome here at Cardiac Radio. So, who is Yvonne do Amaral Pereira? I'm just going to give you a few facts. She was born a beautiful date, December 24th, 1900s, in the 1900 year. It's interesting because it's the year in which the famous Dr. Bezerra de Menezes discarnated. She reincarnated. The spirit, Yvonne do Amaral Pereira, incarnated, reincarnated. And she lived a long life, 84 years of age. She was born in Rio de Janeiro, not the city. It was Rio das Flores, and then she discarnated in Rio de Janeiro as well. So she was Brazilian in that reincarnation, though in previous lives she was European, Spanish, and we'll see her in the very book that we're talking about. She was not an intellectual per se, in the sense of the word, in terms of having degrees, but she was as brilliant as can be. She was born of parents who were business people, but of low socioeconomic classes. She had she was one of six children. And when she was born, it's interesting because she was born a healthy baby, though when she was almost a month, she had, she coughed and it seemed that she choked. She died. They were preparing the funeral and everything, the viewing, the funeral. And the mom went inside the house to pray. When she came by the baby, she woke up. So she had catalepsy. If you go to the Spirit book by Allan Kardec, in the chapter about sleep and dreams, he talks about sleep, dreams, catalepsy as well. And you're going to see people go into this deep, deep state of sleep as if they are dying. Much close to what happened to Lazarus at Jesus' time. Okay? So very, very interesting. Yvonne do Amaral Pereira didn't have an easy life. She had to help her family. Her father went through 3 bankruptcies in his life. And this book, Memoirs of a Suicide, is a good book to make us understand the trial behind it. Because usually when we go through financial difficulties, we often feel like I'm dumb, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Sometimes people don't know how else to succeed. But you see, in this book, it's beyond sometimes the present life will. These are experiences that may need to happen in our lives so we learn how to come around the circumstances without quitting life. But that's the story for another day. Today, we're learning about how this book came about as well. So Yvonne do Amaral Pereira was born in a Spiritist family. Thank God for her, because she had a very clear mediumship. At 4 years of age, she was already seeing spirits, and the parents understood it. At 13, she was already inserted in the Spiritist mediumistic meetings. Remember, at that time, it was pretty different. Life was not what it is nowadays. It was much calmer and easier even to practice mediumship nowadays. And this is just a parenthesis. Many people have a hard time opening themselves to practicing mediumship, etc., because life is so busy and we have so many gadgets, but we need to learn how to tone it down. Yes, to be quiet, to have our moments, to enjoy a little silence, turn off the TV, meditate, pray, listen to nature, even if it's our breathing, because that's nature too. Breathing, and in that way, we're going to be able to quiet down so we can listen to the voices of the beyond or perceive them and know what to do with it. Right, Rosalind Rosa, how have you been? It's good to have us all here back together. So, she had to help the family by sewing, doing arts and crafts, many, many things. The beauty of it all is that she had, of course, spirit mentors who helped her, amongst them Leon Denis, one of them, which is phenomenal. Leon Denis as the spirit who is helping her throughout her mediumistic life, including in this book. And we're going to see that the spirit Charles, who was a father of hers in previous lives, is mentoring her in this life, author of some of the books that she brought to life mediumistically. And Roberto de Canalejas, who is a spirit doctor in this book, who had a very romantic relationship with her in previous life. Yvonne Pereira was a suicidal spirit in previous lives. She was. And that's one of the beauties, though the book doesn't talk about this explicitly, but we get to know that she was a suicidal spirit, reincarnated to redeem herself, and she did above and beyond the programming that she had in her life. So much so that Chico Xavier said to her that it's amazing to see how she really did this big leap in progress, like enormous, from being a suicidal spirit in previous lives to being a wonderful spiritist worker, a medium who is helping all of us as we speak, right? Because as we go through this book, we're going to lift our hopes up, right, friends? So I can tell you 10,000 things about her, but I would say she really devoted her life. She was a medium who could help many people, and she brought the books as well, but she never forgot about the people who suffered the most, amongst them the suicidal spirits. She used to pray for them, and she recommends to us that we do too. Because we need to understand what happens to people when they commit suicide, right? Are you ready? Let me share more with you. Now, let's talk about the spirit author, Camilo. In 1926, when Yvonne Pereira was only 26 years old, she started receiving communications from Camilo. Who is Camilo? The book we're talking about, right, was published in 1954. It took pretty much to 30 years to have it all wrapped up and published for several reasons. Some of them she discusses in the introduction of the book, and I want to share that with you. So let's talk a little bit about the author of the book because he's fascinating. Camilo Botelho actually is Camilo Castelo Branco. In Portugal, he is considered to be one of the classic writers of all times. And Camilo was a Portuguese who was born in Portugal in 1825 and discarnated by suicide in 1890. He was a wonderful writer. He produced more than 260 books at that time. Friends, why am I saying this? Because right now you have computer, I have computer, we have laptops, we have tablets, we have iPhones, and we have pens and papers. I mean, it's so easy for us to write. And yet, it's not that simple. At that time, when things were much more complicated, more labor intensive, he was able to write 260 books. Phenomenal. And he was a good writer. Good writer. He was considered to be like the style, like dramatic, sentimental, belonging to romanticism. He had a little bit of sarcasm, bitterness, and dark humor. But he was very, insightful. And at the end of his life was always very painful for several reasons. I would say he had professional tensions, he had issues in his personal life, and he went through a lot of suffering throughout his life. And when he was a renowned writer, one day he became blind, irreversible blindness. When the doctor told him it was not reversible, he went home and killed himself. He shot himself and died. And we're going to see what happened afterwards. And we're not doing this for the sake of tragedy, but to see the beauty that none of us are left to our co-creations. God, in his love and immense unconditional love, has always a plan for us to rescue us, to help us. And that's why this program is about lifting hope. This book subtitles, it's invisible, but it says Book of Hope. Yes, Memoirs of a Suicide shows the ins and outs of life, and it can redefine our reincarnation. Why am I saying this? Because this book is going to reveal to us many things that happens that we're not aware of. We need to be aware to make sure that our lives are optimized. Do you want to optimize? I do too. Today is February 1st, 2020. We are already in the second month of this new year, and we're like, oh yes, I want to make this year supreme. Yes, in conquests of virtue, of myself, understanding myself, right? Forgiving and forgetting, rejoicing. So many beautiful things to do. This book is going to help us stay calibrated or calibrate ourselves so we can fulfill the resolutions, immortal resolutions, throughout it and beyond. Shall we, friends? Yes, I could tell you much more about him, but I would like to go to the very preface of the book. I have the book in the format of, let me show it to you, the cover page in my phone. Yes, you can buy it at Amazon.com. You can buy the printout, the hard copy, or the Kindle version. And here I have the book. And I turn the pages. It's so easy. Pling, pling, pling. Introduction. What does she say? We're going to learn so many things with Yvonne because she says, I owe this book to the charity of an eminent inhabitant of the spirit world, an inhabitant with whom I feel connected by a sentiment of gratitude that I can foresee being extended beyond my present life. Had it not been for the loving kindness of his illuminated representative, of this illumined representative of the doctrine of the spirits, who, in the resplendent pages of the books he left to the world concerning the Spiritist philosophy, promised that once he crossed over to the invisible plane, and if the mercy of heaven would allow him, he would hearken to the plea of every sincere heart that appealed for his assistance with the intent of progressing. Let me put a pause here. Observe, this is mediumship. And I love to read this book and share with you for another reason. Nowadays, our spiritist movement is so challenged by ignorance because people are not reading the classical books any longer. And they think mediumship is just one type. But when you go to Kardec's book, the Medium's book, which is a must, if we want to practice mediumship, we need to study the Medium's book. Any other book, but the Medium's book is number one. Kardec didn't write that book for the people of the time. It's for all of us, immortally speaking, because mediumship is just part of faculty of the mind. So I'm sharing this with you because there are many types of mediumship. Yvonne Pereira's mediumship is different from other people's. And we need to understand it. She explains it to us in the introduction. Okay? And she was very much a trailblazer because she started working on the Spiritist mediumship in 1926, or actually when she was 1913, and kept on going and receiving messages at a time in which Brazil wasn't a Spiritist country. It was very much Catholic, filled with prejudices, and it wasn't easy. So she really, we take our hats to her and say, thank you so much, Because in spite of the prejudices, the misunderstandings, she never failed to fulfill her duties. I know many people who are in the United States and other countries that don't understand about Spiritism yet. And they are like distraught, frustrated, like, oh my gosh, nobody knows about Spiritism. I don't care. Do you care? I don't care. And I mean, I don't care in the sense of like, it's up to us to make this happen. That doesn't change me. I'm not going to wait for the whole nation to understand it so I become a Spiritist. We can't give importance to it because it's up to you and I and all of us to shift it, like Yvonne did. When Chico Xavier was projected to the national TV in Brazil in 1971, the Brazilian Spiritist movement was very solid throughout Brazil. Nobody's going to reach that projection if we don't have a network in both realms that can sustain the attraction of the people, the attention of the people that will come. We depend on the collective. So wherever you are, in the United States or around the world, learning about Spiritism, practicing, don't wait for people to come and open a Spiritist center near you. Do it yourself. How do you do it? Study these books and start it with one person, you and somebody else. Not to form a Spiritist center, but to form a study group, and from the study group, a mediumistic practice. Because after all, without mediumship, we're only theoretical Spiritists, according to Kardec in the description of the different types of Spiritists in the Medium's book. Okay? So she says that she, in 1926, since the days of my youth and the first signs of my mediumship, she started receiving these accounts from the spirits of suicides who willingly came to the meetings of her center in Lavras. So it's very interesting because she was born in Rio de Janeiro, moved to Minas Gerais, where she did a lot of the Spiritist work. And then, of course, she also is talking about Leon Denis, who was one of the main spirits assisting her in her progression. Leon Denis is a huge mind in the Spiritist movement. And we know, according to the people who have been working very closely with the Spiritist movement around the world, that Leon Denis is in charge of the progress, the current progress of Spiritism on Earth. He works side by side with several spirits, and he's the one assigned currently to take us to the next level in this world of transition. In the Spiritist movement, we're talking about the progress of the Spiritist movement around the world. So it's very good that we're here today reading this and uniting our hearts back with Leon Denis. Leon Denis, one of his phenomenal books, After Death, brings to us the beauty of life. And he, in his loving heart, the great apostle of Spiritism, as she says to us, respected by Spiritists, he helped revise this book. So she says for approximately 20 years, she observed and sensed this noble entity, and inspiring her on one day and drying her tears when painful renunciation was imposed on me as expiation indispensable for the uplifting of my conscience, still immersed in the shame of the consequences of my own suicide in a past life. Pause for a second. Do you feel sometimes this shame of the wrongdoings of the past? in this life and previous lives. Who doesn't, right? But much like Yvonne Pereira, who had spirits such as Charles and Leon Denis cheering her up, you and I do too. Have loving spirits who are here like coaches saying, come on, let's cheer up, move on, forget the past, move on, let's work, let's help. Nowadays, like Mentor Joseph the other day said, Vanessa, I would like you to watch a series on Netflix. I'm not going to say the name because, I never watched this series. And he said, I want you to watch a little bit, some episodes. And I said, why? Because I want you to understand how some people behave to make it more meaningful, the study of the book, Memoirs of a Suicide. I watched like 3 episodes. And I turned to Mentor Joseph and said, you're right. It's messed up. And then the other day, I was in a meeting, a PTO meeting in the school parent-teacher organization. And interesting enough, people started talking about ladies' night out, men's night out for the parents. And they started talking about bars and drinks and cocktails and I was like, that's in the meeting. And for a moment, I asked myself, what's the purpose of this ladies' night out? I mean, we're going to leave our kids at home, go out to drink for what? And then I was about to ask everybody, what's the purpose of it? Maybe I'm too much of a nerd that I don't understand the point. And then Mentor Joseph says, just observe, don't ask it, because they won't understand that you don't understand it. And I was like, you're right. But, at some point he was so right that the principal turned to me and said, what do you think, Vanessa? And I was like speechless. I was like, I don't know much about this. I'm observing and learning. And I couldn't say much more because it was like a completely different world. A world so far from daily life that I couldn't grasp the reasons why people do that. You would get together with people you don't know just to drink and then go home feeling high. I don't understand the point. Or maybe because life is hard. Well, there are different strategies to cope with it. I remember when I was in college, and some people approached me and they asked, what do you do when you're upset? Don't you smoke pot? And I said, I don't. Just because I don't have the courage to do it. I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't gamble with life. So then this girl turned to me and asked, what do you do, Vanessa, when you're upset, when you're not happy? What do you do? I said, I pray, I work out, I cry if I need to cry. It is what it is. It's part of life, right? Pretending that it's not going to happen. As a spiritist, because I have been a spiritist all my life, I said, as a spiritist, I understand that pain is part of life. Running away from it's not going to make me gain anything. And that's exactly what Leon Denis says in his book After Death. Pain is law in this world. In the sense, we are here to adjust ourselves to the new, to learn, to escape in drinking, smoking, having sex, and going crazy, and it's not gonna solve any problem. Actually, it's just going to get worse. Harvard said in a recent study, there are many studies nowadays, but recent studies showing to us you're pushing your brain to grow older when you drink alcohol. Of course, it dehydrates your cells. So we need to spread this news because many people don't know what they're doing, as Jesus said. We're not judging. We're just sharing. And if you know more, you can share with us so we together, we progress reading ourselves of our ignorance together. So here we have Yvonne Pereira saying, she discloses to you and I that her life wasn't a piece of cake. And she discloses in the introduction, in previous lives, I committed suicide, she says. It's in the introduction of the book. And she says that she had these good spirits, including Leon Denis, helping her. She says here, for 20 years I lived, so to speak, with that venerable brother whose instruction brought consolation and hope to my soul, and whose advice I always tried to put into practice, advice that today, more than ever, as my present existence nears its end, speaks to me ever so tenderly in the privacy of the humble premises where these lines are being written. So she's saying that she received advice, so you and I today are being asked, are you recognizing the voices, the feelings, the vibrations of the good spirits that love you, that guide you? Can you perceive them? You do? Because if shame and guilt are blocking your perception, remember, Jesus said, I have come for those who are sick, not for those who are healthy. So if you are sick of shame, sick of sorrows, sick of pains, anguishes, of guilt, you have help. There are those who are uniquely working to boost our lives. And that's why this program, reading this book, is all about lifting hope. And she says, of all the many spirits of suicide with whom I kept in contact by means of my mediumistic faculties, one of them stood out due to his assiduity, meaning frequency, and friendliness, with which he always honored me, and especially due to the famous name he left in the area of Portuguese literature. Of course, she's talking about Camilo Castelo Branco. And it's interesting. She says how she received this book. She didn't say she received like in a sitting or in a month, 2 months. It took her several years to receive the information, to evaluate, to wait, to double check, to have people read it, to allow Leon Denis to revise it. And that's the beauty of her humility. Many people are not working mediumship because they lack humility. They're like, what I receive is not good, so I'm gonna drop it. Don't. Take it with you. Keep it. Read it. Observe it. On high, they know what we need to do. If she hadn't believed in it, we wouldn't be sitting here today talking about this book. What do you need to do that will be helpful to people in lives to come, friends? You're a co-creator. God created you, created me. We can't doubt our uniqueness, our importance, and at the same time, our smallness, and that's okay. It doesn't matter. if the world recognizes it or not. What we know is that you have the recognition of the most important force in the universe, God. And then Jesus, the governor of our planet. He knows of you, he knows of me, he knows us very, very closely. He's our shepherd. And he counts on you, he counts on me. We can't fail any longer. The time has come. We need to work to share the good. Like Yvonne Pereira, she was there in a small city, in Minas Gerais, in the Espírito Santo, receiving these pages. As a woman, at a time, you can read in the book, Mamma Mia, being a woman was not for these things. So it wasn't easy for her either to be a woman medium at the time in the Spiritist movement. Women at that time in Brazil didn't have a voice. If we are conquering that space nowadays in the world, imagine a century ago. Oh, I received a message. People like, pff. Some believed, others didn't. What did she do? She became upset? No. But she said it wasn't easy. So then it comes to a point when she says, the type of mediumship, mark it down, because this will be a study on mediumship too. She said, strictly speaking, these pages were not psychographed because I was able to see and hear the scenes described herein very clearly. I was able to observe the individuals and locations up close with absolute clarity and certainty, as if I were actually present, observing everything that was happening, and not just obtaining the information through mere narratives. If a character or a landscape was being described, I would immediately see that character or landscape while either following the superb words of Camilo or the vibrational wave of his thought as he transmitted them. It was through this essential poetic and marvelous manner, and not through psychography, that I obtained the lengthy series of literary essays furnished by the inhabitants of the invisible, materials which till recently I kept hidden away in a drawer. The spirits who assisted me utilized psychography only for the services of medical prescription and short instructional messages having to do with the environment where the mediumistic meetings took place. And I can honestly say that it was thanks to that wonderful relationship with the spirits that I enjoyed the only moments of bliss and happiness in this world, as well as the strength for the testimonies I was called onto the present before the great law. Pause for a second. You see the type of mediumship? She's saying as if she was watching a movie. While, when you're watching a movie and somebody's next to you, they're saying, oh, that scene, this, like Camilo and her, she's watching. It happened to Chico Xavier sometimes too. He would psychograph. In his case, it was mostly automatic writing. He would do the automatic writing, but he would also watch the scenes. So it's important for us to understand that there are many different types of mediumship, and I think this book brings us back to that study. We need to study this to rid ourselves of prejudices and do what we gotta do in the Spiritist movement nowadays. So she says here, the notes and messages I wrote down upon waking up were rather formless, having neither the shape of a novel nor a doctrinal treatise. Later on, however, they were fashioned by the book's compiler, Leon Denis, who wanted to use them as means to gently expound bitter but necessary truths for the times we're living in. Of course, one might ask why Camilo himself did not do this, for of course he had the capability. I can only say that to this day, as I write these words, I still do not know the answer to that question any more than anyone else does. As a matter of fact, I never asked the spirits the reason for it. Pause. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Some people, they want to ask too many questions. Some people sometimes ask these questions to me. Vanessa, did you ask Mentor Joseph this? I said, I'm not here to bother him with questions. I need to be obedient. And obedience with my own reasoning, of course. But I don't interrogate the spirit mentors. That's not a good attitude. And our dear Yvonne Pereira is sharing with us her sense of dedication, devotion, surrender, humility, and obedience. And you may not like the word obedience. Nowadays, people don't like that word because we're too rebellious on earth. But how can we live a good life if we don't simply trust the good? Our reasoning says, these are good things. Our spirit comes and does this. We do it. Oh, but why we're doing this? Please just do it. Like parents and children. It's wonderful, or teachers and students. It's wonderful when the teacher says, friends, let's open the book on page 50. And they open. It's terrible when a student says, well, why do we have to do this now? I mean, it's okay to reply, fair. We can have questions, that's okay. But we're talking about the appropriate moments. And she's sharing with us that question doesn't really change anything. Because if Leon Denis was the compiler, so be it. Right? And she says, moreover, for approximately 4 years and for reasons beyond my will, I was unable to maintain regular communication with the spirits at all. And once the obstacles were finally removed from my pathway, the author answered my pleas only to tell me he would be reincarnating soon. So you see, Camilo, when you read this book, you're going to understand how long he was in the spiritual realm, preparing himself also for a new reincarnation. He discloses to us it wasn't easy to have his ideas being written in the physical realm. We're going to talk more about it as we go through this book. Not all the mediums accept the task, and you see it. So we need to be easy in the hands of the good spirits. By the time the book was coming about, he was preparing for a reincarnation. Leon Denis had to wrap it up because it was vital to release it to us, the public. It's life-saving. She says much more, and you can read it in her introduction. She's going to talk about the beauty of these teachings and how much she understands that this will bring hope to people. Then, this was written in 1954. Then Leon Denis brings to us his beautiful words, and I'll read, and this was 1957. He says, to you and I, meditate on these pages, dear reader, even if it is hard for your pride to accept them. This is Leon Denis' words. And if tears sometimes well up in your eyes at the telling of a dramatic account, do not fight your benevolent impulse to lift up your heart in compassionate prayer for those who suffer in pain and affliction in the tragic aftermath of their infractions of God's laws. This message by Leon Denis is telling us how important it is for you and I to go through this, meditate, and pray. Pray for those who, like Yvonne, Pereira, Camilo, others who knows ourselves in previous lives, committed suicide. Let us pray and help those who are at the edge of it or who will be pushed to it by other minds. So this book, as he says, it's about lifting up our hearts in compassion, compassionate prayer for those who are in pain and affliction. Are you ready? You are now being recruited to spend 23 days together in this current of love, knowing that the good spirits are counting on us during these days to do this, sustain this current of prayers for those who are afflicted, who are suffering, so they can lift up their hearts. As we lift up our hopes, we're sharing the good as well. Shall we, friends? How about if we wrap up today together in a prayer? Yes? Right, Rihanna? Yes, we must practice this listening regarding the spirits to hear them and fulfill it. Shall we? So let us visualize the legion of workers of Mother Mary, because that's what the book is going to talk about as well. Those who are in charge of rescuing the afflicted in the valley of suicides, and many more. Mother Mary and her legion of workers. We're going to be in touch with her heart, her capacity of love. Let us feel her loving embrace, visualizing our homes, being enveloped by the loving energies of hope, spreading to our neighborhoods, to our cities, states, and countries, enveloping our planet in a current of beautiful blue light, and hope being spread out to the remotest locations of suffering where nobody can see. May these rays of healing light lift up the hopes of many. And may we together walk with you, dear Mother Mary, throughout these days, learning, loving, and serving, for we understand that the world needs it. And we thank you for the opportunity of being here and having all the resources to study this book. May our dear Yvonne Pereira, may also Camilo Castelo Branco and Leon Denis receive our gratitude for the long-standing efforts in bringing this book to life. May we be inspired by their resilience and endurance in doing the good, always. O Mother Mary, may your loving embrace sustain our hopes and especially encourage us to help others, to aid them, to assist them. With your loving heart, we shall stay, so afflictions decrease on earth as we speak. and the good multiplies as we speak. Thank you, God, for life, and so be it. Yes, friends, here we are. Right, Isabel? Thank you. So thank you, friends, for joining us. We will be here together, sustaining this beautiful candle of hope throughout these days, hoping that the good spirits can use this energy to help and assist so many who are in need of relief in their sorrows and anguishes. Okay? This is Lifting Hope here at Kardec Radio, always nourishing our souls. A big hug to you, and until tomorrow, God willing, friends.